Okay, so in the last video, I showed you guys how to install Android Q Beta on the Essential phone. And in that video, I said that I would make a video on the state of Android Q. And well, it took a bit longer than I wanted it to, and I had to test it a little bit more than I thought I would. But this is it. This is the state of Android Q Beta on the Essential phone. And let's start this off with my favorite feature, the gesture navigation. And looking at this, you may say, well, this looks like Apple's gesture navigation. And if you said that, you'd be right. It does look pretty similar. This is really just an amazing example of Apple coming up with just an amazing original idea. What? Oh, they stole that from Palm? Never mind. Anyway, this was not turned on by default for me, and so to turn that on, you just go to Settings, System, Gestures, and then you can choose between Oreo style, Pi style, and the new Q style. And you may say, I don't really get it. Is it really that much better for navigating the OS? Are these gestures that intuitive? And you know, I'd say maybe. I don't really know. Depends on the person. But that's not why they're my favorite. They're not my favorite because they're intuitive or they're smooth, although those are cool features and they are in some ways. But the main feature is that they take up less screen space, at least for me. All Android phones at this point have a chin, and the Essential phone especially. And so, you know, removing that bar, that big bar, or at least minimizing it, really makes the device feel more modern, and you feel like you have a lot more screen space. You know, I really like this. They also have the new back button is integrated from the side, which when you're using it one hand is actually really nice because you can do it from each side. So it's actually pretty intuitive in that way. Although some apps kind of get in the way where they want you to swipe to the side. But when full app support comes, I'd say this would be a superior way of having the back button. And remember, you can always just change it in the settings. But yes, this is my favorite feature. Let's move on to the next feature, and that is dark mode. Now, dark mode is just a toggleable system-wide dark mode. You can have it in your notification tray, or I think you can have it turn on automatically, you know, at certain times. And it affects a few Google apps, so, you know, you go through Photos, you go through Phone. If you turn it on or off, it affects those apps. It's a little buggy, and for me, it doesn't work in Messages, which is actually really strange because Messages already has dark mode. But I'm sure whenever it gets fully smoothed out, it'll be even better. This is just nice to not have to be blinded by your phone whenever it's dark, and it really just is it's just a nice to have. Hopefully, is what I'm thinking the next logical step is that Google will start to support third-party apps, you know, Twitter, Reddit, things like that, and so that, you know, that would just make sense. But we will have to wait and see on that because I don't think that's implemented right now. And I think the last major change is theming. Well, theming is a pretty short thing. It's just now in developer options, you can choose between 4 different, main system accent colors. You can have your device default, blue, green, or black. And this is actually really nice, especially for me. I've always wanted to change it just for like the notification tray. If you really try to theme your phone with some attention to detail, it gets aggravating if you can't change the color. Now, I know on like OnePlus's OS, you can actually change it like to an exact color, which would be nice, but hey, I'm just happy Google could add anything, and they may add something like that, or at least more colors in the full release. We don't know yet. This is just beta 3. But I think that's it with theming. And right after theming, I think the last change at all that I can think of. I mean, obviously, I'm not covering all these small things. I'm just covering things that people would notice in everyday use. And the last thing in that is the privacy features. And so before, you couldn't really have as much control over if someone could use your location while you're not using the app, and what permissions what apps have. And so now you have privacy settings where you can see all the apps that have what permissions, and you can choose it to where apps only use your location when you're actually using the app, which a lot of apps, that's all you need. But for most people, I don't think that's actually a big deal. I know it definitely doesn't affect my user experience that much. And I mean, obviously, I do want this feature to come to Android. But for the beta, for this feature, I can wait a few months. I'm not jumping on to get this privacy feature as fast as possible. And those are basically all the major changes in Q. And really, when you compare it to some other Android updates, it's a smaller iteration. A lot of the things that they've added have been things people have been waiting for. Small things people have been wanting for years now. And, well, it is really nice, but it's not one of those big, full-featured, updates. So I'm kind of sad about that. I like a lot of changes. I do like a fresh operating system, a new way of doing things every year. But I'm just hoping that the next release brings a lot more changes. But my big problem with them not having as many changes this year is that Android Q Beta is pretty buggy. So here's the point where I list off a couple of bugs I found. There's things like cell service acting really weird. There's gestures sometimes just being finicky from the home screen. And whenever you're swiping through apps, it'll like go through the apps that you've already swiped to if you swipe too fast. It's hard to explain, but it's really weird. And you have other things like the gestures just not being very smooth and consistent. We have things like whenever I had Signal and I went to go call someone, and instead of calling them, it just said call ended. No matter who I called, and later it fixed itself. And then it happened again. That's a really big deal. If you use your phone a lot and you need to call somebody and you just can't, that's a problem. And, for some people, they don't rely on their phone fully. I know I'm one of those people. I plan to keep Q on my phone, at least for, the next betas, so that maybe I'll make more videos on it. Maybe I won't. We'll see. But for a lot of people, they rely on their phone pretty heavily. And if you can't rely on your phone, that's a problem. So I'm actually going to recommend, which I couldn't see myself saying this, but I recommend that you don't get Android Q Beta. If you rely on your phone and, you don't see these as, I need those features now, which I don't think anyone really does. That's why I was saying they're smaller features. And so if you're not one of those people, I don't recommend updating. I recommend you wait till either a more stable beta or the new release. I didn't even mention the bug where some apps just don't work. Like, you open the app and it crashes, open the app and it crashes, or something else in the app is broken. I'm not sure what change was made in Q that makes this happen, but if you have an app you rely on and the app doesn't work, that's another problem. And so, obviously, it's a developer preview. It's for people to get their apps working. And, I don't think last year was as buggy, but it had more features. And maybe I was just more excited about it. Maybe this has enough features to justify the lack of reliability and the abundance of bugs. But for me, it doesn't. And that's my conclusion. Of course, if you disagree with me, if you think I'm wrong, you can leave a comment down below explaining why. Or if you just have questions about anything, you can ask those below. I've had someone comment how to uninstall it on the video where I showed them how to install it. If you are in that same boat, there are some instructions on the site, on Essential. I'll put the website somewhere. I don't remember the exact URL. But if you have any other feedback on something unrelated to the update, comment section. I respond to almost all the comments I get, and I appreciate them a lot. So, like if you like, dislike if you don't, and subscribing is always appreciated. I'll see you guys next time.